Hey everyone, welcome to Homeless in San Diego. My name is Greg Angel. I am joined today by Sunny Soto-Brisco. Sunny, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So Sunny, you and I met at, what was the event? It was the
Beyond the Streets, panel thrown by Jimmy Figueroa and Jordan Verdine. Yeah.
in Oceanside.
Yeah, at the Sunset Brooks Theater.
Yeah, so
That was awesome.
that was this summer, and it was an opportunity. We had a lot of people there. We had
Yeah, it was a good
150
turnout.
people who came out on a Sunday night to learn about homelessness and what they could do.
Yeah.
I had not met you before that, and I was just really impressed with your story, who you are, what you're doing.
Thank you.
And so to our listeners, you're going to get to hear from Sunny today, learn more about what she's accomplished, what she's doing. And then I think you want to turn the tables and even ask me a couple questions.
Yeah, I'm curious. Yeah,
I'm a little nervous.
And not to hit your ego, but I had no idea who you were until that day either.
That's
so
good.
I'm like, it's good to come off of, any type of outside noise and just to meet people and have a good conversation, which I think is so needed,
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can learn from each other today.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
That's
cool.
the point of life, right?
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, Sunny, tell your listeners as I hit the microphone here, a little bit about yourself and your story.
Yeah, so Sunny Soto-Brisco, from Oceanside, California, and born and raised, and I'm Luiseño native, so my family's been here since before Oceanside was Oceanside, and was always raised with my single mom, never knew my dad, my grandmother, and my grandfather. They built their houses in the east side neighborhood of Oceanside, so we've been there forever, and really lucky, I'd say, to think about you can be born anywhere, right? Your star can get thrown down anywhere, and to be native to Southern California in a beautiful city like Oceanside, I consider myself really lucky. So, I've been there forever. In 2016, my grandmother passed away a few years before, and my mother lost our house that my grandfather built in the east side. So it was the first time ever that our family had, housing instability. And I was like my adulthood at that point, and I was trying to get out of my hometown and go make something of myself as a chef. So I had moved down to San Diego, the city of San Diego, just a few months before that happened. So once my family was going through this, I just was kind of stuck. I'm like, oh no, I'm out here in San Diego, not that far, but still 30 minutes is, a lot. So I was just getting my own life together there. My girl at the time and we had our little apartment and, Hillcrest, and we're just living our best life. So that was definitely a hit to the ego. And I think it really changed my perspective about homelessness in general and, the immense ways people get there and the differences in everybody's story. And then my mother was a pillar in our community, when I was young, just fighting gang violence, it was a lot going on.
The East Side community?
Yeah, in the East Side community between a couple of the neighborhoods in the 90s. My mom worked for Balderrama Park, which was right there. And as a counselor, there was a lot of gang violence going on, and she's a tough lady. I probably am a lot more like her than I'd like to say. So she, led a lot of, the victory outreach programs. They were doing Stop the Hate, Stop the Violence protest. And I remember as a kid, us getting our T-shirts of our rest in peace to whoever, that homie was that passed away that week. And we would protest and walk all around Oceanside with candlelight vigils and just, trying to really spread the news of trying to stop gang violence, in our own neighborhood. So, she really instilled those things into me as a young kid. And even growing up, we had youth services like Brother Benno's and, food rescue and things of that sort. My grandmother worked the fields, and my grandfather worked for the city. And just those types of jobs and those eras got them their properties and things like that. But my mom, unfortunately, a lot of my grandmother's kids, they suffered a trauma in 84. I was born in 88, so 4 years before I was born. My oldest uncle, who was an amazing community member. He was a big pillar in youth services and things like that in our community. He was shot and killed by an off-duty police officer. and it was like over a girl, I guess they were both dating or something. So anyway, he ended up being killed. And I think though it was before my time, I know it changed the trajectory of my family.
Yeah.
And I think that my mother, my aunts, my uncle, they all really were affected in that way that, it caused addiction in a lot of people, the mental health, just a tragic loss like that really changes a family's DNA, So though I never knew my uncle, I was raised around what I now know is the trauma that really changed my family. And so for my aunts, my uncles, my mother, they, just were never really able to find that stability that my grandfather and grandmother hoped to set up for them. So I see the bigger picture now, where those little things lead to bigger pictures down the road, to be honest.
You lived that picture, you lived that reality, you were born into that reality.
Born into it, yeah.
And now you're sharing that you see that bigger picture. When and how did that evolve? I mean, how do you go from it is your reality to being able to describe it as you just did?
You got to get out of it first. For me, I felt different than my family. I thought a lot of it, I mean, we're indigenous, we were colonized into Catholicism. And so for me, being a very queer Native kid, who also like my dad was never in my life. I never knew him until recently. So that part of who I am or my family or whatever, I was just raised within my indigenous family, which
that was your only family.
My only family, yeah, which is a blessing because the perspectives that you get from indigenous culture, having to live how we are characterized and categorized and having those like kind of ways that like not trusting the government, things like that. Those kind of lessons as indigenous folks are instilled in you young. And so growing up, I had these perspectives, but then realized, something was different there. For me, it was being queer and that no one in my family was out or anything. So it was I felt different in a way, but I thought that was like the thing, that I'm not just a good Catholic girl. I have no interest in, my first communion or my, all of these things that are just kind of laid out for you, and you should
part of that culture.
Yeah, you should be abiding by. So I did what I had to do. But once, I was acting out in high school and just a lot of friction within my family. And I felt that I was trying to make something for myself. And, the only examples that I had around me really were bad ones. And so I ended up taking more of like a criminal turn. And my family was never that. They were more like addicts. So it's like you categorize almost how you're a criminal. And that would like, once I caught my first felony, they kind of were like, oh, she's on her own thing. So, I had to break away, get out of there. But also, that life wasn't for me either. So I'm glad to be able to have more, and I guess a hunger for more. So once I got out of there, I realized like, oh, there's a lot of deep-rooted, things that I know I have to heal from, but then so does the generations that come before me, and they don't have the language nor the resources, nor maybe even the self-awareness that, there's things going on there that cause the patterns that we got in our families. So, after all that to say that I think me feeling different was because I'm the one that will change that for my family. And for maybe...
That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's a powerful...
Yeah.
Does that feel burdensome?
No. It makes me motivated. I am a mother, and that also is like a whole other life-changing thing, You look at a person and you're like, man, if I can change the world for us, for our family, for you, like, it's extremely powerful. And you should. Everybody has some power in them to change something,
Yeah, and the power is so much greater when we're working with younger people.
Yeah.
In terms of the impact that we can have and the bigger impact on their trajectory in life.
And I mean, reaching back and being able to look at the generations before you too and say, hey, I realize this is what's happening. Like, are you down to take this kind of healing journey with us to, just continue to heal lineage,
In my experience, it's really rare for someone to have the perspective that you have of being able to look at your own life from an intergenerational, multi-generational, I should say, perspective.
I wouldn't say I'm religious by any means, but I would say I'm extremely spiritual. And being Indigenous, I've always been tapped in with my intuition and maybe messages from beyond and things of that sort. They always play out in my life really well. And I feel like because I'm able to kind of tap in with that self-awareness and I guess you could say ancestral knowledge, I do feel that like I'm on my purpose in every which way, So
you talked a little bit about your upbringing and then you fast forwarded to, or you talked about your grandmother dying and your mom losing her home, and you were away. You had moved out. You were on your own down in San Diego, and you said you were in the hospitality or the restaurant business at that point.
Yes, yeah.
And so had you found a passion for that, or what was your drive at that point?
Yeah, for me, food was always something I loved, especially hospitality, something about from front of the house to back of the house, serving tables. It's been in my family a little bit. Like we've had restaurants and my cousins and things of that sort. And I would, as a young child, like 9 or 10, 12, I would be in there just helping out. And it's something that I always enjoyed. For me too, once I started getting in trouble, like really young, like fresh out the gate, I was 18 and caught a felony. So, by 22, I had my second felony. And as a young adult trying to enter the workforce with 2 felonies on your record, it's not the easiest. So you kind of take what you can get. And there was a lot of, sales jobs, things like that I could do that just weren't really fulfilling me in a creative sense. And so getting into the restaurant industry again was really where I found my niche, and the back of the house, being on the line and cooking and being a chef. Also, it's something that you don't necessarily have to pay to college to do. You gain experience and you can work your way up up the ladder that way. So that's where I found my happiness. And when my mom called me and said, hey, we're homeless, there's locks on the door. Thankfully, I was able to get her and my cousin into a hotel for a couple days so that we can kind of see what's up. And, it's been a challenge since. I can't say that there still is stability in that status, but they're better than they have been and slowly progressing. So I'm glad that I'm able to help them in that way, at least make sure that I can use my resources and the knowledge I have to try to, maneuver things for them. But yeah, that day I just looked around my neighborhood and in San Diego. It's homelessness is an issue that you cannot ignore in Oceanside, especially in 2016. It's a lot more manageable. You can turn your blind eye on and pretend you don't see it. In San Diego, that was not possible. And I'm thinking, my mom being a community pillar and my cousin who graduated magna cum laude of his class at Cal State San Marcos, who just, may have, again, undiagnosed mental health issues, maybe on the autism spectrum and not getting diagnosed and having these issues, and then student debt, it's to have those 2 people sitting on the street and for them to have people just be walking by them, ignoring them, pretending they're addicts or, burnouts. It didn't sit right with me, and it really clicked. Like, there's so many more stories out here. Like, how can I help and do something that it seems meaningful with the skills that I have?
So what do you do?
So I made a lot of meals, and I decided, I can make a lot of food for cheap. That's what I do as a job. So I went to the restaurant I worked at the time was a really great company. Their focus is around community and sustainability. So all of our coworkers are just the best people.
Nice.
And I put a little envelope in our break room and I said, I want to make a bunch of meals in between the holidays. If you want to put $5 in here to help me with some supplies or whatever, or, some hands the day of, let me know.
Yeah.
So we raised $40 and then I came in one day, I was leaving the money in the envelope and it was taken. So someone took the $40 and my friends were beyond upset.
Yeah.
So we ended up all just like throwing whatever money we made that day, which doubled what we had. And we went out, made a bunch of like hot soup and chili. It was really cold and rainy season in San Diego.
Yeah.
We threw it in the back of my SUV. We made a bunch of pulled pork sandwiches and divvied them up between 4 groups of our friends. And we all had like text messages and we're going out to 5 main areas of San Diego to feed people and just give them fresh pair of socks, water bottles, sodas, something with some caffeine in it, something just a little to break the barriers of these random strangers running up to you asking you if you want a hot meal, But
how did you do that? Because I can tell, and our listeners can certainly tell in hearing your story, that you came at this from a place of wanting to help and wanting to connect, not doing something to make yourself feel better, but to make other people feel better, right?
Yeah, totally.
But yet it's a barrier to try to do that with somebody who doesn't know you,
right?
Who's in survival mode,
yeah.
Right. So how do you do that?
There is that survival mode, and let me tell you, there's a feeling of feeling invisible.
Yeah.
Like nobody cares.
Yeah.
Okay. My friends, myself included, I like to say, we're not bad looking. We're little cuties, to be honest. Like, it's not your church group. We're coming up to you. We got hip hop music on. It's just a very different vibe for some reason. Yeah. And we're able to take our own vibes and our own lived experience and just seeing, because we're all equal, right? Like, we can be honest, and we've had addiction issues. We have felonies. You're not lower than me. I'm not trying to save you from yourself. All I want to do is make sure you had a hot meal today.
Yeah.
Right. And that's it. And if you're not hungry, I get it. I'm out. I'm on to the next one, So it's something about that warmth coming in and just being asking, all we'd say is like, are you hungry? No? Cool. If you are? Yeah, come up. They come running, and it's an easy, I think it's less armed sometimes.
Approachable,
yeah,
respectful.
Yeah, just,
just
a bunch of females with hot food and sodas, like, for the most part, they're going to come running.
That's cool. So when was that?
That was 2016.
So that was 2016. Okay.
Yeah, 2016. It was right in between the holidays. Yeah. And
so from that, that was your first successful outing.
Yeah.
Overcame the money getting stolen, got the people together.
Running from the cops again, trying not to get fined in downtown San Diego or sports arena area, we're just serving soup, serving sandwiches out the back of our SUV, and we have to play shadow games with the police, or we could get fined. They could throw us, all the food away. It's not like we had a permit to be street vendors or anything like that, so definitely risky, but it always gave the group, we'd meet back at my house and, celebrate and just like talk about how much more we could have done and how we'll make it bigger next time. And so every once a season, we were able to do it at that point.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in 2020, my wife and I, our child was 9 months by that time, I think, and just crawling. We had this little 1-bedroom apartment in Hillcrest. It was like, we're outgrowing it, we got to get back. So, I said, let's go back to my hometown, Oceanside.
Okay.
And my wife's from the Midwest, so her and her best friend moved to San Diego years before that, and we, on a whim. So she fell in love with Oceanside too, and was like, let's go back. So we were able to move into a bigger house on the day the COVID shutdowns happened.
Wow,
so
what timing.
Yeah, and it's, moving's stressful, especially in San Diego. You got to come up with big chunks of money.
Yeah.
And you're usually going out of budget, and so I'm sitting in my new big empty living room getting fired on the phone because
it's COVID.
Because it's
And you
COVID
work in
and
the restaurant
hospitality,
industry,
we
yeah.
don't need you.
Yeah.
So thankfully my wife didn't get fired and they needed her.
Yeah. But that must have been scary. You move into
yeah,
a new home
nerve-wracking.
and you lose your job on the same day.
Totally.
Yeah.
We were going, we're spending more money. We have a child. Yeah, of course, he didn't know of any checks or any type of stimulus or anything that was going to be coming. It was definitely nerve-wracking. But, we were there. I was home, so I felt a little more at ease. Like, I have so many people that I know, and I'll make something. I'm a hustler. Like, something's going to happen. I'm not one to just give up, you know?
Yeah.
So, I was actually stoked and able to be like, oh, well, I have way more time on my hands now. Like, maybe we should continue this like outreach thing that we've been doing and like help people, here in my hometown. I know these people. These are my people.
Yeah.
And it's COVID. Sounds like a perfect storm to, get some things cooking, literally.
So what was next? What did you start cooking?
So I put it on my Facebook and just asked my family and friends, if anyone was doing any type of thing, like there's any organizations that would need a meal program, that maybe that's the part that's missing for them. Got linked to Vanessa Graciano of Oceanside Homeless Resource, and then she introduced me to Jordan Verden like the very next day. And ever since then, me and Jordan have been teaming up for our Wednesday showers in Oceanside. And
so Jordan's with Humanity Showers, and so him and his group go out and provide shower services throughout North County, different communities. They're there. I don't know the schedule, but it's this place every Tuesday, this place every Wednesday afternoon.
And his organization started as, bottles of water in a bucket. So he had the same type of alignment in the way that he did things. That's something also I take really into thought process. I'm sure you can tell I'm intentional with, the things I say, the things I do, and the people I want to work with, they have to kind of, be a little like the same type of mentality. And Jordan Verden is the same. He just wants to help people, and the growth of his amazing programs. It's amazing to sit back and watch. So I'm glad that me and him could work together.
Yeah, and Humanity Showers, for our listeners who aren't familiar, the other part of what Jordan has done is sharing the personal, the people who are on the streets and providing a platform for them to share their story, share their experience. Jordan's a storyteller and a photographer, definitely a gifted artist, as well as a committed
a good man.
Change maker, like yourself, Sunny, change maker. So that's a great combination, right? He's doing showers, you're providing the meals.
Yeah, he had the spot already hooked up.
Yeah.
He had, the relationships with the people that he needed to have it. And I said, great, I can show up every week and I will bring food, a hot meal to feed everyone. And we kind of looked at each other like, okay, yeah, we'll see, see you when I see you. And we just kept showing up every week together. Yeah.
Sunny, your organization is Sunny Street Outreach. Is this when you teamed up with Jordan? Is that when Sunny Street Outreach became known as Sunny Street Outreach, or was it earlier?
I guess, yeah. On the flyer that I had put in my break room, I had put it as Sunny's Street Outreach, and like a note to like, this is what we're gonna do if you guys want to join in, just so that my coworkers can know what that was even about.
All right.
And I guess it just kind of stuck, like when I was a kid, my mom worked with Victory Outreach, and so something about that kind of just evolved into it, and it stuck. My friends then, when COVID hit, we were doing so many more meals a month and so many more often, like more outreaches, and our friends, it's always been our circle telling their circle, and that's just how we got bigger and bigger. And they would start drawing logos for me and just like making cute stickers for us to put on the boxes, and it would always say Sunny Street Outreach. So yeah, it just organically came that way.
What is Sunny Street Outreach up to these days?
So now we've gone from just a rogue mission and to a mutual aid effort, to just being a 501c3 official, and have evolved into offering catering services, mobile bar services with mocktails on kegs, and trying to sustain our funds. I think for us, to being a mutual aid that really has just grown, our focus, we really see the difference between, the established organizations fighting for a piece of the pie of grant money, of government money that is going to be allocated to address homelessness or whatever it may be. So for us, we see us as like a gap filler. Like we want to be able to use our skills as entrepreneurs and the thought of capitalism and how people, will pay for services that they need. But how can you create a business model that doesn't break down communities with this money spent or feed people's pockets, but it actually goes into your community and helps build and to help get more money into schools who may be underfunded, get more money into these gapped resources or intersectional communities that are underserved, that they don't have to come from the government. Again, that may play in from my own generational trauma of being a Native person as well, and understanding that not always is the government out to help you. And in reality, there might be systems in place that are definitely meant to be put in place against you. And that's me coming from a marginalized community, just sharing my truth and that perspective.
Well, there are other examples too where well-intentioned government assistance programs create negative impacts or just prevent upward social mobility. Let me say it that way. Yeah. Right. So when we look at housing assistance, whether it's a Section 8 housing voucher or short-term rental assistance that organizations like Interfaith provide, they're often, when they're government funded, they're income contingent. And so if somebody earns a certain amount, if their income increases, they're no longer eligible for that support.
Right.
I mean, that can have a stifling effect, right? Well-intentioned, understandable. They're targeting at low-income households, but I think it's just another perspective on the need for value-add social enterprise, which it sounds like that's exactly what your organization is doing.
Yeah, totally.
So you're providing catering services. Share more about that, and in particular, I'm thinking about our listeners who are like, "Oh, I might be interested."
I need to cater.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then you're using those proceeds to then fund your outreach to
our
provide meals.
Our free food programs.
So cool. So talk about the catering services, the mocktails, all that.
Yeah, the catering has definitely evolved. So we do because we're a 501c3. It's great for corporate events because they can write it off, and it's technically a donation to us. We have a team of chefs who are just amazing from cuisines all over the world. And we can do so many great things. Front of the house, servers who, this is our career. This is our choice, right? Yeah. So many times you go to work with caterers, you go to a restaurant, and it's filled with people who kind of just use it as a stepping stone. And there's a smaller group of us that think that hospitality that's our niche. That's where we're good at. That's where we're happy. It provides nourishment. It provides an experience. It provides a good feeling, So just like our outreach resource, you come to have a free breakfast with us, it feels like a restaurant. They get their meal how they want it. I remember dietary needs and restrictions and things like that, So it's that same hospitality that I would bring if I'm getting paid right for our free food programs. So with catering, I mean, you're working with us to curate your menu for every event. We just did a big wedding this weekend, and the brides, they wanted to walk through kind of their nationalities, and they were mixed nationalities through the cuisine, and they did family style dinner. So we had chicken mole and some like vegan Pakistani shish kebabs, and it was just amazing. So
sounds amazing.
Yeah, we love to do all types of events. My wife and I also have both been sober from alcohol for 3 years.
Congratulations.
And so thank you. As bartenders, as hospitality workers, we love to go to people's parties, but it's really an afterthought about the friends who are sober curious or don't drink. And honestly, there's so many more people nowadays. I feel like it's, it's really coming up in trend, which is great. So providing mobile bar services, they're like, yeah, there's alcohol. If you want alcohol, we can do it. It's fine in California law, but really it's geared towards the non-drinkers, the mocktails.
Well,
so
cool.
we do handcrafted kegged cocktails or mocktails, and we serve them off the tap at your party. So
Nice.
yeah, those are
What's one of the popular mocktails?
like watermelon mojito. People love a like mango chile, Paloma type of vibe with the tahini rim, and super
Sounds
good
great.
and refreshing. But
Making
yeah,
me
those
thirsty.
are our little businesses that we're using right now to get money in the bank so we can build a trailer similar to like Humanity Showers. We want to keep our mission mobile. So we're building out a hot kitchen cafe that will be like your go-to coffee shop in the morning for your
Okay.
on-the-go breakfast.
You're
And
raising money for that now.
yep, raising
Awesome.
money with that. So that's what we do our catering for. That's our next big buy. Hopefully, next year we'll be able to roll that out. And so it's a buy one, give one model. Every coffee or breakfast sandwich you buy from us provides coffee and breakfast for folks that day. So
That's beautiful.
that's the goal.
And so if our listeners want to learn more, either explore catering opportunities, or I'm not sure if there are other ways that they can support the business.
Yeah, our website has everything there streamlined. You can fill out a catering inquiry there. You can learn about our cafe that we'll be having. You can learn more about what we've done, all the different programs that we offer now. It's nice to see the different things in community we've built, and have annual things like our tamalada and stuff, where there's so many years we've been putting in work. It's an annual thing now.
It's awesome. It's awesome. What's the website?
So it's a sunnystreetoutreach.org.
Sunnystreetoutreach.org. We'll put that in the show notes as well. And then the free meals that you're providing, what do those look like? How often?
Yeah,
How are you
right
doing
now we
that?
do weekly meals with Jordan Wednesdays. This year we've taken a step back from that and doing one a month with him.
Okay.
Just
In Oceanside?
Yep, in Oceanside, 208 South Clementine Street. We're there every Wednesday morning with hot showers, free food, free meals, resources, haircuts. It's honestly just an amazing space to come in. If anyone ever wants to come and volunteer and show up, there's, we have chiropractors who come and donate their services for our guests. We have yoga instructors, art there. It's just a different vibe every week. So it's a really cool place where community just comes to hang out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sunny, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing who you are, your perspective. Thank you for the work that you're doing, the community you're creating and nourishing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're very inspiring. And again, I appreciate you taking the time to share with our listeners, and hopefully it'll help introduce new people to your work, get more support going, get that truck purchased for next year.
Yes.
Sunny, what else do you want to share today? And then I know you had maybe a question or two.
Yeah, definitely. I guess, our main mission with Sunny Street Outreach, we say community, hospitality, compassion. Our main mission is always focused around perspective. So I think for us, like, we love for folks to really play with the ideas that you have and why they're there. Are they prejudices that are there concerning a group of people just because you don't know any people from those groups or something, changing perspective around the causes of homelessness, the issues of these on a bigger scale, I think is so important. And I hope that, even just hearing my family's story of how that can gradually get there, how people, and I know on your podcast you have so many people who have experienced homelessness, each story so individual, so different. Listen to these people's stories. Think about that next time you're out and, it's something that you're seeing that's causing you to have a negative reaction in your body. Question yourself, why is that happening? I think there's so much divide within our Western society, within our Western culture, that there's not enough people that talk about meeting in the middle and bringing those two worlds from opposite spectrums together to really have solutions that work. Because in my perspective, I feel that everybody wants the same things. It's the road and the reason maybe why you want it and the road of how you get there that's different.
I think a lot of people don't put themselves in the shoes of the other individual. I think a lot of people, when they see somebody who they think is homeless, they think about it from their perspective, from their housed, often privileged perspective.
Totally.
And the people who I know who are intentional or just it just is who they are, often because they're from disenfranchised communities, because they're from marginalized backgrounds.
Yeah.
They're instantly thinking about what that person's perspective is and
Yep.
going there. And I know you made a case there for us not being divided but coming together. But I really see that as a divide, that I think far too often it's people not considering the perspective, considering the experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wondering, okay, that person looks awful. How did they get there? Like, they weren't born that way. It didn't start that way.
Right.
You know, no one in kindergarten says, what do you want to be when you grow up? Oh, I want to be homeless. Like,
Yeah.
nobody says that, right? Like,
Well, my thought too is finding the duality within both of you, because as myself, being someone who's housed and I've never had to sleep on the street unless it was my choice,
yeah.
I've been looking like a bag of rocks some days, right? And I have the privilege of hiding it behind my four walls. You know, a lot of folks share the same mental health issues as the people on the street that maybe got them there. The trash, the, hoarders. Just because you have a 3-car garage to keep all of your hoarding in and hidden from your community does not mean you don't have it and you don't have an issue. Mental health issue, addiction. I know more people who are addicts who are housed than I do who live on the street. I know more people who have mental health issues that go unresolved or not taken care of that are housed than I do on the street. And I work with folks who live here on the street.
Yeah. You have an informed perspective on this,
It's
right?
it's a perspective. It's just coming off of your high horse sometimes to say, man, honestly, living in California, it may only take 1-2 things to go wrong: a health problem that costs too much money without health insurance, losing your cushy job, that has kept you afloat for so long. There's only a few steps for most of us to get to there, and if you have if you have no self-awareness, that you can't see how so many of us are in similar situations but fighting the same battles just differently, that's where I think is the call to action, is changing your perspective, changing your mind, starting to ask yourself questions of why you think like that, and doing the work. That's the part of mental health, and people say that therapy does, right? You may not have to go to a therapist and have a 30-minute appointment every week to just start thinking a little bit differently and having more compassion.
Well, and I would challenge all of us to bring that perspective that you just brought, that you know more people with mental health issues who are housed, that and you went through the line, and when we look at unsheltered homelessness, it is the result of all of our systemic inequalities and systemic problems in this country, and so when we think about solutions, we have to think about the personal solutions that you're doing every day. That the members of our organization at Interfaith do every day. But then we also need to create systemic changes.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate your naming that part of your work is not just about supporting the operating of providing meals, but you're trying to lift up communities.
Yeah.
You're trying to create more investments so that the schools have more resources.
Yeah.
I think that's a really beautiful way to do this work.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Again, it's me coming from lived experience, just trying to roll into these now titles and things that I have, right? And figuring out how we're going to do it and the evolution of that, and just watching it evolve, and sitting down to have board meetings with the school board and saying, hey, we just want to be able to give you money to fill in these places. Like, if you want to partner with us, it's coming from a grassroots versus, acclaimed and established organizations. It's hard to sit there sometimes with that imposter syndrome that you belong there, and the good work will be received, So thank you.
You're doing great work, Sunny. I appreciate you coming on the show today. You said you wanted to ask me a question?
Yeah, I'm curious, because I wanted for us to be able to speak without me ever Googling you or having any type of outside noise. But because we met that day on the panel, it's so interesting to me that, you are the CEO of such an established organization, the work that you guys do, and how far it's even reached the ears, you know what I mean, in government and in all of that. How did you get here? What is your just, a gist of like your story? Do you have lived experience with these things, or is it, college that led you to a career that comes into nonprofit work? I'm curious.
So growing up, I wanted to change the world in a significant way. I saw injustice in a lot of places and wanted to make an impact there, and I thought I was going to work internationally. That's where, as a real young kid, that's where I saw the biggest injustices. And so I was preparing for a career in international development, international peacemaking, that kind of thing. And I needed to get international experience. So I was waiting for my Peace Corps application to get approved. And I was living here in San Diego, and I wasn't very good at budgeting, and I ran out of money. And so I needed to get like a real job. I was working different like odd end jobs. I was tutoring. I did some bill collecting. I worked for like a stock. I did all random stuff, right? And my sister had gone through the University of San Diego nonprofit master's program teaching future leaders for the nonprofit industry. And through that network, she got a job listing for a faith liaison and volunteer coordinator at a group called Interfaith Community Services. And she knew that I was looking for a job, so she sent it over to me. And I came and I interviewed in the room right there. And that was 18 and a half years ago.
Wow.
And the founding executive director of Interfaith Community Services, she had been leading the organization for almost 30 years at that point. So when you talk about grassroots, this place started that way. We started with a bunch of clergy who stopped a hate rally from happening here in Escondido, and then said, okay, if we have that power, what else can we do? And they saw hunger, and they saw growing homelessness, and they started feeding people.
Yep.
Sound familiar?
Yep.
And then they began building out programs to help prevent people from needing the food, right?
Yeah,
or to
totally.
overcome the challenges. And so
Yeah,
Suzanne hired me. And
So interesting. When you said that, it just made me think, it's like you're really growing this to hopefully never have to be around anymore. Like you're growing for the end of your...
For sure. We would love that,
That's
right?
so funny.
We have a long ways to go.
Right.
So Suzanne hired me, and I'm like, I want to work internationally. And she's like, well, hopefully you'll stick around for a little bit. And, I have a lot of blind spots in my life. And so I did not have near the appreciation that I should have for the needs here in our community. And as I got to do this work in a supporting role, so I was not a direct service provider. I was bringing in support and bringing in supporters to help the work. It changed my life. It changed my life in terms of seeing the positive impact that we can have in changing the trajectory of people's lives, and also how we do it here at Interfaith Community Services, which has always been predicated on diversity. And that idea that you, me, and Logan's here helping with the podcast, leading the way like he always does, like the three of us are so much wiser and gonna be able to do the work so much better together.
Totally.
It's gonna be harder, like in some ways, it'd be easier if I just said, oh, I'm just the CEO, I'm gonna do what I want. Or no,
Right.
you're the founder of Sunny Street Outreach, you're gonna do what you want. No, but when you bring your coworkers in, right?
Yeah, you need to. The skills. I mean, as community, the base word being unity, right? We all have so many different perspectives, life experience, skills to be able to truly make a bigger impact. And that's what it's all about.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's sustainable too. Like it's there's more sustainability as we build out the village and build out the network more.
Yeah, because you can't be everywhere at once, right? Yeah.
Well, and none of us will be doing this forever,
Yeah.
So we need, unfortunately, I would love for any of us to be able to end poverty or to eradicate the impacts of racism of all kinds in our lifetimes. I don't think it's going to happen. So, but we can be the generation that helps create the setting for the next generation to do that work, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And we need to, right? Because if not us, who's going to do it?
Who got us? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's a little bit about how I got into it.
That's great. And what are some of your stats at Interfaith now that they've grown and you are the boss? What are the, amazing services that have added to what y'all do?
Well, I think the most important stat is not a statistic, but like the focus. It's interesting in getting ready for this episode. You shared with Logan that that you really bring a sense of caring for the people you're serving, and that's the focus, is like the community members. And I see that here at Interfaith, and most importantly, I hear it. I hear it from our clients. I hear it from our employees. I hear it from our partners, that they see that we're not in this work for ourselves. We're in it for the clients who we're serving, for the community. And we've been really intentional in institutionalizing that, making that just very clear that those are our core values. Those are who we are. If you're going to work here, you need to embody that. And that, I think, leads to the like impressive outcomes that I think we are able to realize, where last year we were able to help almost 1,500 people move out of homelessness into housing, permanent housing.
That's awesome.
We were able to prevent another more than 1,600 individuals from becoming homeless, and doing that in a whole variety of ways, and really leveraging community partners in that work, and looking for new ways to do it. So always balancing how to strengthen what we're doing while also creating new pathways, because you know this, and many people who listen to the show will know this, but the larger public probably doesn't have as good enough understanding that there are not enough shelter beds. There are not enough, most of all, affordable housing. Affordable housing. Like, that's it. Like, what if we didn't need shelter because housing was actually affordable? Right. So working to address those as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's awesome. I know, too, you guys offer like addiction services, which is, the resources. We don't have enough resources to fit the people in, especially when they are ready to be, take that path. The timing and everything kind of has to work out super sweet around that specific issue, which, I've come to find out too, it wasn't for a lot of people, it wasn't an issue before they got to the streets, and the addiction and the drug issues come while they're trying to survive on the streets. And that's an even harder trauma to really work through and get people ready to become, to get clean, or to take even that first try to get clean. Because usually, I also know from personal experience, it takes a few times. So that's something huge. I know is a lack of resources. How have you folks implemented, addiction services and things like that into your work?
Yeah, I was with the organization for a little bit, and then I left, and then I came back as our CEO in 2014. And when I came back, the number one need that the community identified was a place for people to go who were trying to overcome addiction and often also homelessness. That this was before the expansion of drug Medi-Cal services, and so there were hardly any treatment spots available, and the ones that were, they were kind of all over the place in terms of the quality of services that they provide and how they went about it. So we've created, in partnership with a whole lot of other community members and with local government as well, a complete continuum of addiction treatment programs, beginning with detox, going into longer term residential treatment, outpatient services, sober living. But to your point, those programs are full. And so we operate an 11-bed detox here today where we sit in Escondido. We get, on a typical day, more than 40 phone calls of people trying to get into that program. About half of those are from family members who are like, my son's ready. I need a place for him to go. So we've been working really hard to expand that detox. We've been able to secure a new contract. I actually just signed a contract this morning with the County of San Diego to expand that detox program. And we're working specifically to convert space that used to be shelter here at our Escondido headquarters to be additional detox treatment beds.
Right.
We need support from the city of Escondido to do that, so we're working with them on that process. And then we're also looking, of course, outside of Escondido at just creating more pathways into treatment. We are going to be expanding and creating new homeless outreach teams in Oceanside and in Carlsbad.
Awesome.
That will specifically include addiction treatment counselors on those teams.
Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, we're excited to create more places for people to go, and also more people to help get folks into those programs when it's a good fit for them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know Oceanside and Carlsbad, we got that nice big chunk of money down from the state, and your guys are contracted as one of the main people on that. All the services that we're going to bring in and use that money for. I guess, that's another question. I mean, we're sitting here in Escondido today. I represent, all of San Diego, Oceanside specifically, where I'm born and raised. Y'all's work is mainly in North County, or do you get to reach out to all over San Diego as well?
Most of our locations are in North County. Some of our programs are throughout the county. And then but our housing programs are Oceanside, Escondido, primarily with the service center in Carlsbad as well.
What I've found too in my work, and being, again, operating on a mutual aid kind of way, there is like politics in this work that we do, you need to have. There's a little territory sometimes on certain services, kind of feeling like, oh, you can't come into our territory. This is where we work or whatever. I think a main question, like I know here in Escondido, you've had issues with the city, with the community, the other part of the community that maybe, everybody likes to say we want to solve these issues, and then there's that, but not in my neighborhood kind of perspective. And I know here in Escondido, your shelter program has had some issues with the city, maybe be threatening to shut you guys down. And I would love for you to touch on that. Like, what is it having to feel like you're offering these amazing solutions to these big problems, and then having higher ups or city officials be going against those solutions?
It's challenging. It's challenging. Earlier when you were sharing about your family dynamic and that you are in a position to help change and create positive upward mobility. And I asked if is that a burden, or does that feel like a burden? I think that comes from me being in a place the last 6 months that have been very challenging. To your point, we're all working our butts off to help people overcome some of the the worst time in their life. We're trying to help everyone get off the streets, all these things, and yet to have some individuals think that what we're doing is actually part of the problem. It's disappointing and it's challenging, but you wake up every day and you go, well, I get to be a part of creating that opportunity.
Yeah, you still see the tangible difference that you're making and the perspective that the others may not have.
Well, and to me, the more depressing, the more challenging route would be to not be doing this work, would be to say, okay, people disagree with us, so we'll focus on the things that only people agree with.
Right.
Well, that's not going to create the type of systemic change that we need in order to address these issues. So we see it, and I see it as an opportunity to really focus on better educating everybody, to raise up that the people, like you were talking about challenges here in Escondido, 70, 80%, depending on which factor you want to look at, 70 or 80% of the people who are unsheltered here in Escondido, they're from Escondido. They're born here, they're raised here, their family's here, they work here, right? They're not here for our peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Right.
They're here because this is their community. Well, not everyone gets that. Some people think, oh, they're from another place.
They were shipped in.
Yeah.
They're immigrants. They're refugees. Blah blah blah.
So it just makes me think, okay, well, let's work harder and let's make sure that we better educate and share. And this podcast is a huge part of that, because people who do tune in get to hear from brilliant people like yourself who share about your personal experiences. And then we also are looking at ways to better reach people who are not listening to this podcast. Right. So to our listeners of the podcast, you can help by sharing, but also understanding the people we're really trying to reach probably aren't going to jump onto a 45-minute podcast about homelessness, so you can share the lessons that you've learned. You can share the insights.
Have the uncomfortable conversations with people that you love, that see different views, because that's how we have to be as well. We sit at tables where I don't want to be sitting at sometimes. These people aren't my people. But those opposite sides of the spectrum have to come together to be able to talk about the issues, talk about how the resolutions will be actual solutions. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, even at Thanksgiving, that there's that big thing. You don't talk about politics. You don't talk about religion. And it's like, why not? If we're not talking about it, how do you learn from each other? The algorithm isn't going to be the one to teach you anything,
Yeah, it has to be personal interactions, and people will listen, and people are more likely to listen to those who they love, and who they're close to.
Yeah,
right?
Humanity, just that connection, bring it back into the world. I think post-COVID too, a lot of people search for that online, and social medias and things are very curated to who you are. So having those uncomfortable conversations with just humans in general and making connection again, something fun.
For sure. Well, Sunny, we've gone way over time, but but this has been, I mean, I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I appreciate your questions, and hopefully our listeners have found it educational and interesting, and found some nuggets to share, or maybe some things to consider next time they hear somebody say something negative or derogatory about people who are homeless or experiencing homelessness, that they got there. There was a journey to get there.
Yep. There's a little bit of everybody inside of us all.
Yeah. Okay. We always do calls to action. So for our listeners.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's an election year. Obviously, the national election's important. Your local elections
Very important.
Are extremely important. For me, in my perspective, again, I was a felon for a long time, so I just got my right to vote back. So I just say, make sure you're registered. Make sure you're doing the research on the people who are running for office or running for council in your city. Those are so important to know what's going on in your local politics. That affects your everyday. It affects organizations like Interfaith. It affects where the money's going to, maybe organizations that don't have a good quality like Interfaith does. So learn those things in your local city, get involved, and definitely go out and vote for whoever aligns with whatever you got going on.
Yeah. No, it's a great call to action. The voter turnout will be higher this year because of it being a presidential year, but that shouldn't drive voter turnout. To your point, local government has such an impact over our day-to-day lives, and especially when we think about homelessness.
Yeah, or just impacting change. If you want to make a change, it's easier to make a change locally than it will be on a global scale, nationwide scale. So just get informed.
Yeah, I love it. Love that. Register to vote. Make sure your friends and your family are registered. Make sure they then actually vote. Registering doesn't do any good if you don't use it. And then my call to action would be take a look at Sunny's website, Sunny Street Outreach. I'm going to go on there. I want to find I want to find an opportunity to work together.
Yes.
The catering sounds exciting.
Yeah,
I want to try
fun.
some of those mocktails sometime.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So get involved. Take a look at her organization, at their organization. And then just get involved, like whether it's getting involved at Sunny Street and other organizations, in your community, at Interfaith, be a part of creating the change that we're looking for in this world.
Definitely. Sweat equity is used in America. Use it for something good, for sure.
You got it. Hey, Sunny, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it.
All right. To our listeners, we will see you again next time. Thanks for joining us. Logan, thanks for getting us set up. Logan moved offices this week, and he set up the whole setup here in like 3 minutes. Is very impressive. Held it together. Daniel's out getting ready to welcome a new kid. So congrats to the guys behind the scenes. And
Yes, sir.
thank you to our listeners for being a part of this work together. We'll see you again soon.